Pack your things. My mother said those exact 5 words standing in my grandfather's kitchen, like she'd paid the mortgage on it. 1 week after we buried him, my little sister was already upstairs, giggling as she picked out her bedroom in the only home I had ever truly known. The same home they dropped me at when I was 5 years old and never came back for. 21 years of silence. 19 birthdays where I called my mother's phone, and she never once answered. Now here they were with an appraiser, talking about market value and family decisions, treating me like a guest in my own house. They thought I was still that helpless little girl on the porch. They had no idea my grandfather had left me one final instruction. And when I followed it, when that study door finally swung open, their smiles died on the spot. What was waiting inside proved they never really forgot about me at all. They had been choosing to leave me behind. On purpose. Every single year. But today, the choosing finally stopped. My name is Marlo Calder. I am 26 years old. If you have ever been the child your own parents set aside, type I was the leftover in the comments below. I read every one of them. And if you want to hear what my grandfather kept locked away for 19 years, stay with me. Because this story is only just beginning. To understand what was inside that box, you have to go back to a summer morning, to a faded green suitcase with a broken zipper, and a promise that lasted exactly as long as it took their car to reach the end of my grandfather's gravel driveway. I remember that suitcase better than I remember their faces that day. It was pale green with a cartoon rabbit stitched onto the front pocket, and the zipper had already started to jam the winter before. So it dragged and caught with every step. My mother packed it herself, folding my shirts in that brisk, efficient way she folded everything, and said, "We're going to Grandpa Otis's. You'll stay with him for the summer. Be good. And before you know it, we'll come back for you." She said it over her shoulder. She was already looking at the car. My father carried the suitcase to the porch and set it beside me without a word. My baby sister, only a few months old, a person I would not see again for 21 years, was asleep in her car seat in the back. I remember waving. I remember the taillights at the end of the driveway. I remember they did not slow down at the stop sign. Summer ended. That suitcase sat packed by the front door for 4 months. Because I believed the promise longer than any adult in that house did. School started in September. And that became a problem. Because a 5-year-old cannot simply be enrolled by a grandfather with no paperwork. So an envelope arrived in the mail, a notarized form giving my grandfather legal permission to care for me. Signed by both of my parents. My mother's careful handwriting right there on the page. They were willing to sign a form, buy a stamp, and drive to a post office. They were not willing to drive back for me. My grandfather kept that envelope for the rest of his life. I didn't understand why then. I understand now. The first night I truly realized I was staying. He made dinner. A thick, dark beef stew. The kind he'd cooked for cafeteria, lunch lines for 30-some years. He ladled out a bowl for himself. A bowl for me. And then a third bowl, which he set at the empty end of the table on an old blue enamel plate. Like company was expected. "Who's that for?" I asked. "Habit," he said. "In case someone hungry stops by." Nobody stopped by. He rinsed the untouched bowl out at the end of the night without another word. And when I asked when my parents were coming back, he dried his hands slowly and didn't answer at all. That December, the phone rang on Christmas Eve. The heavy old landline in his study. He walked in and pulled the door almost shut. And through the gap I heard half of one sentence in a voice I had never heard him use before. Low and tired and hard as a cutting board. "So what exactly are you planning to tell her?" Son, then the door clicked the rest of the way shut. He came out and told me my parents were busy and couldn't come get me yet. From that night forward, every time he called them, he locked the study door first. My 6th birthday came in the spring. He handed me the phone and a scrap of paper with my mother's number written in his blocky cook's handwriting. and I sat on the porch steps with my bare feet on the boards and dialed. It rang and rang. Then a beep. Mommy? It's me. I'm 6 now. Grandpa made a cake shaped like a duck. I hung up, proud that I'd remembered my whole message. Through the front window, I saw my grandfather standing in the study, his hand resting on the receiver of that old phone, like he had just hung it up, or was just about to pick it up. It would take me 20 years to find out which. The house raised me almost as much as he did. A small brick rambler on the edge of Asheville, North Carolina, with a vegetable garden out back that he treated like a second career. He'd fed other people's children in a school cafeteria his whole working life. And when he retired, he simply moved the whole operation home. He taught me to hold a real kitchen knife when I was 10 years old. Not a toy one, but his own knives from the oak box on the highest shelf. The one with the small brass lock. Knives aren't dangerous, he told me, folding my fingers around the handle. The wrong hands are. When the lesson was over, the knives went back in the box, and the box went back on the shelf. I asked him once why a knife box needed a lock. He looked at it a second longer than the question deserved. Because some things have to wait for the right hands to open them. And there was the extra portion. It became a small legend on our street. Kids figured out fast that if you showed up at Otis Calder's back door around supper time looking hungry, you got fed. No questions asked. Right off that blue plate. Some weeks it got used 4 nights out of 7. Other weeks, quiet ones, nobody came. And he ladled out that 3rd serving anyway. Set it at the end of the table, and let it go cold while we ate. I finally asked him straight out, "Who's it really for?" "Grandpa." He turned off the burner before he answered. "For whoever finally figures out the way home." And there was the study. His desk. His rotary phone. A wall of spiral notebooks filled with recipes in his own hand. The door stood open nearly all year. Except once. Every single spring. A few days after my birthday, he would go in, lock the door, make one phone call, and come out with red eyes. I tried the brass knob once while he was out in the garden. Locked. I never tried again. Here is what 19 years of birthdays look like compressed into a few minutes. At age 12, I practiced in the bathroom mirror because my voice always shook on her voicemail. And I hated that. At age 16, the phone rang exactly twice. Then cut straight to voicemail. You have to press a button to do that. That was the year I learned the difference between a call that goes unanswered and a call that gets declined. At age 17, a classmate turned her phone around in the cafeteria and asked, "Isn't your last name Calder?" It was my mother's account. Years of photos. Beach trips. Christmas mornings. My father grilling in the backyard. And in nearly every frame, a girl younger than me. Bright-eyed. My father's same chin. The caption under the pinned photo read, "Family is everything." Her name was Della. My sister. The baby from the car seat. She was 12 years old in those photos. And I scrolled through her entire childhood in a few minutes flat. And I was not in a single one. Not tagged. Not mentioned. Never there. They hadn't just left me behind. They had erased me. I got through school. I earned a partial scholarship to a culinary program. And my grandfather quietly covered the rest out of an old savings passbook, waving off every thank you and teaching me his stew instead. The workman's version. Cheap cuts. Long hours. No shortcuts. Recipes aren't worth much, he told me, tapping my wrist to correct my grip. The hands that have made them 1,000 times. Those are worth something. At age 24, I called my mother for what I later counted as the 19th time. 1 ring, then voicemail. At age 25, I sat on the porch on my birthday with the phone in my hand. And for the first time in 19 years, I didn't dial. I turned the phone face down on the boards and let the evening go quiet around me. Later, I told my grandfather, as evenly as I could manage, "I'm done. Grandpa, I've called enough." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once, walked into the study, and shut the door. I thought he was giving me privacy for my feelings. He wasn't. He was writing something down. 3 months later, he collapsed in the kitchen with a wooden spoon still in his hand. The diagnosis came that August pancreatic cancer. Advanced. He chose home hospice. His own kitchen. For as long as his legs would carry him. I cooked by the seasons my whole life. He told me when I tried to argue, "My season's here. Marlo, don't pick a fight with the weather." One evening that fall, I came in through the back door and heard his voice in the study. Low and level and hard. The same tone from that one Christmas Eve, 20 years earlier. Then I heard him set the receiver down so gently it barely made a sound. "It's done," he said. He tied on his apron and started dinner like nothing had happened. When I asked who he'd called, he only said, "Old business." From that night on, he wrote every evening in the study. Sometimes for an hour. When I asked, he said he was copying out his recipes so they wouldn't be lost. But my grandfather never needed a recipe written down in his life. They lived in his hands. In December, I was refilling his water glass when his phone lit up on the nightstand. A text from a contact saved simply as D. He was asleep. I stood there with the glass in my hand and every reason in the world to look. I didn't. His phone. His business. His right. In January, he asked me to bring him the knife box. I carried it in. And the weight of it always surprised me. Heavier than a box of knives should be. He rested both hands flat on the lid and told me 3 things. In the order-giving voice of a man who had run kitchens his whole life. 1, you do not open this. Not yet. Not even after I'm gone. 2, the day your mother stands in this kitchen and talks to you about money, and that day will come, you go get this box, and you open it right there. In front of her. Not before. Not after. Not somewhere private. Right there. 3, whatever happens in that room, you make sure Della sees what's inside. The floor tilted under me. "Grandpa," I said. "How do you even know her name?" He looked at me with an expression I'd only ever seen him wear at the stove. Total certainty about something still cooking. Still covered. Not ready to serve. "The house has settled," he said. "Don't waste your grief fighting over brick. Marlo, fight over the truth." He died in the early hours of a Sunday in February. In his own bed. In his own house. At 79 years old. I found the pot from the night before, still on the stove. He'd talked me through the stew from his chair. And I'd ladled it out the way he taught me. 2 portions. And a third. The third one sat there that morning. Cold on the blue plate. 20 years he'd made that portion. Nobody ever came for it. And now nobody would make it again. They came to the funeral. I'll be fair and say that plainly. They came. They wore black. My mother, Renata, hugged me for the first time in 21 years. And in a church half full of neighbors and old cafeteria coworkers, she pressed her mouth close to my ear and whispered, "We need to talk about the house. Soon." That was her eulogy, delivered privately to an audience of 1. My father, Grant, worked the reception like a man running for office, misty-eyed over how much his father had loved fishing. A neighbor who'd lived across the street for 30 years waited for him to finish and said, flat as a plank, "Otis got seasick at the duck pond. Hun." My father laughed like she was joking and moved on to the next group. Later, I found him walking the house alone. photographing every room with his phone, including with the flash on, the brass lock on the study door. Only one door in that house was locked, and I had the only key. Then there was Della, 21 years old now, tall and careful, standing at our mother's elbow all afternoon like a well-trained shadow. We hadn't spoken, but as they were leaving, she peeled away and crossed the room to me, not quite meeting my eyes, twisting the strap of her bag around her fingers. "Do you still make the stew he liked?" she asked. I stared at her. A car horn sounded outside. She flinched, said sorry, and was gone before I found a single word. How did she know he had a thing he liked? 2 days later, my mother called. The first call she had ever placed to me in 21 years. And it was a scheduling call. They'd come by Friday morning to start sorting through Grandpa's things. They'd hired a professional. When I repeated the word appraiser slowly back to her, she sighed the sigh of a very patient woman. "This is grown-up business. Marlo, don't turn paperwork into feelings." Her first call in 2 decades. And it wasn't for me. It was for the house. So I don't count it. I spent the days before Friday the way he raised me to checking my ingredients before service. I met with Carol Whitfield, the estate lawyer whose card he'd left clipped to a folder marked, in his own block letters, "When I'm gone." She confirmed what he'd told me in January. In his own words, the house had been settled since the previous November, and I was the one with the right to be standing in it. When I asked why he hadn't explained it to me himself, she almost smiled. He said the paperwork was my job. The rest, he was handling personally. His exact words. Back home, I found a package on his desk wrapped in butcher paper, tied in the double knot he used for trussing meat. Marked simply 4D, the same initial from his phone in December. 2 letters. And I still couldn't let myself connect them. Because every version of that connection rearranged my entire life. On the night before they arrived, I sat at the kitchen table with the knife box in front of me, and my thumb resting on the brass lock. I built the case for opening it early. What if it was only knives? What if the illness had reached his mind at the end? And these were just a dying man's rituals. Meaning nothing, my thumb was right on the lock when I heard him. Really heard him. The way you hear the dead in the muscle. Not the ear. Right hands. Right time. Right order. I took my thumb off the lock. At 7:56 the next morning. Gravel crunched in the driveway. My mother came through the front door already talking. Crossed the living room. And yanked open the kitchen curtains he'd always kept drawn against the afternoon sun. "God, it smells like an old man in here," she said. To no one and everyone. Behind her came a rumpled appraiser with a leather folio. Genuine apology on his face. Taking notes almost immediately. Behind him, my father. Scanning the room like a storage unit he was pricing. And behind him, Della, sent upstairs with a hand between her shoulder blades. "Go on, sweetheart. Pick whichever room you like." My mother sat down at my grandfather's table without being asked and laid out the morning like a project manager. The market was strong but softening. Spring was the season to list. "I'd get my share," she said. "If everything goes smoothly." I asked small, quiet questions. And it turned out to be easy. Because they had 21 years of assumptions saved up and no practice at all being questioned. Which room was Grandpa's favorite? I asked my father. He gestured with his coffee. Confident. The den. He practically lived in that recliner. The den had been my bedroom since I was 5. His actual chair had sat 6 feet from the stove for 20 years. "Let's not make this complicated," my father said into the silence that followed. This house should have been mine years ago anyway. Not grief. Not family. Should have been mine. Upstairs had gone quiet. No footsteps. No closet doors. The performance had stopped, and the silence had a shape to it, like someone standing very still at the top of the stairs. Listening, my mother tapped the table twice. Like a gavel. Fine. Let's talk money. Sell within the quarter. Split appropriately. A decent share for me. Always contingent on cooperation. Then she stood, smoothed her slacks, and said it, pack your things. Sweetheart, by the weekend, you said those exact words before. I told her, one summer morning, in our old kitchen, you folded my shirts. I waited on that porch for 4 months for you to come back. The kitchen went still. My mother's jaw shifted. And because she is who she is. She didn't deny it, she corrected the record. That was different, she said. That was for my career. She heard it half a second after everyone else did. I set my coffee down. I need to get something from the study. The hallway felt a mile long. I pulled the cord from under my collar, and the key turned for the first time since the night before the funeral. It smelled like old paper. Pipe smoke gone stale in the walls. Machine oil from the pencil sharpener. My parents crowded the doorway, scanning fast and hungry for a deed. A will. Some kind of proof. I took the knife box off the desk and turned around. For 1 full second, their faces did something remarkable. The smiles shut off entirely. The fear of paperwork. Then my father saw what I was actually holding and laughed out loud in relief. The old knives, what's the plan? Going to threaten somebody. That's when Della appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Not coming down already there. Both hands wrapped around the banister post like she was holding the house steady. Her eyes weren't on the box. They were on me. Waiting. I carried the box to the kitchen table, because those were my instructions. The kitchen. In front of her. I opened the brass lock and lifted out the top tray of knives. His good steel gleaming in the morning light. The false bottom released. Underneath, filed upright like recipe cards, were folded pages torn from spiral notebooks. Each one labeled in his block handwriting with a single year. 19 of them in a row. And one more at the back. On different paper. What is that? My mother said. Not a question. An objection. I read the first one aloud. A year. A date. His handwriting strong and square. She called tonight. I heard her dial from the porch. She's 6. She told the machine about the duck cake. After she went to bed, I called my son. He answered on the second ring. I asked him to call his daughter back. He said now wasn't a good time. I asked when a good time would be. He hung up. Nobody in the kitchen moved. I read another. Years later, she's 15, she said into the machine. I just wanted to hear your voice. Mom. I called my son. I read him her words. He said, don't make a thing of it. Dad, I have been calling this boy once a year for 10 years. He always answers me. He has never once dialed her number himself. I keep thinking there is a bottom to this. There is no bottom. Here is what those pages meant. And everyone in that kitchen was doing the math at the same speed. There had never been silence. Every single year of my life. On my birthday, my grandfather had picked up that rotary phone and called his son. And every single year, my father answered. They talked. And then, with the phone still warm in his hand, with my message sitting fresh on the machine, my father chose not to press the buttons that would call me back. 19 birthdays, 19 calls answered, 19 decisions. They hadn't lost track of me. They had kept perfect track. Abandoning me wasn't something that happened once in the past. It was something they renewed every single year. Like a subscription. The last page wasn't notebook paper. It was good stationery. Dated the previous September. And I read it slowly. Because a dying man's instructions are a debt you pay in full. Called my son today. Told him straight. Pancreatic. Months. Not years. Told him if there was ever a time to come see the girl. To come see me. This was the time God was giving him. There was a pause on the line. Then he asked me one question. I looked up at my father. Who gets the house? Dad. The appraiser closed his leather folio with a small, careful snap, tucked his pen away, and stood. I don't believe there's anything here for me to appraise, he said, and let himself out. The outsider was gone. What remained in that kitchen was, God help us, family. My father found his voice first. Blustering. He was sick. Marlowe. Sick people write things. He didn't know what year it was at the end. He didn't make anything up. Della said, quiet and absolutely level. Walking in from the stairs to stand across the table from me. I know. Because for the last 4 months of his life, I texted him every single day. My mother's voice cracked in the middle of a word. You what? Della told the kitchen the whole story in under 2 minutes. Her hands perfectly steady. A year earlier, sitting beside our mother on the couch, a call had come in on our mother's phone. The screen, said Marlowe. One ring. Our mother's thumb moved without her expression changing at all. Declined. Smooth as muscle memory. She'd asked who Marlowe was. Nobody, our mother said, and told her not to worry about it. Della had gone digging in an old file box in the garage and found a notarized form from years earlier with my name on it and both of my parents' signatures. She sat on it for a year, scared of what it meant, until she overheard a phone call about the old man being sick, and typed a message to a Carolina number at 2 a.m. My name is Della. I just found out I might have a sister. Is it true? He'd written back the next morning, typing slowly, 2 fingers at a time. It's true. Sit down. Child. This will take me a few days to tell you. 4 months. An old man. 2-finger typing his way through his last winter. A few sentences a night. To a granddaughter he'd never met. He told me to be here today, Della said, looking at our mother. 21 years of training falling off her face all at once. He said, whatever they tell you the trip is for. Come. Your sister is going to need one person in that room she doesn't expect. My mother lunged for the phone in Della's hand. Della stepped back out of reach. And in the scuffle, my father's key ring slipped off his finger and hit the rug. Nobody bent down to pick it up. This is insane, my mother said, her volume climbing. You're a child. You don't understand what things were like. We are still your parents. This is still this family's house. He told me everything. Mum, Della said, there's nothing here to sell. And there's one more thing, Della added. Something even Grandpa never got to hear. She set her phone flat on the table and pressed play. A recording from that past Christmas silverware. A chair creaking. And then Della's own voice. Tight. Asking one more time why no one would just tell her the truth about her sister. Then our mother's voice. Relaxed and unhurried. Settling a topic for good over dessert. Stop bringing that girl up. She was the price of my career. And I paid it. Your grandfather taking her settled the debt. It's done. Della. Some choices you make once. And you don't reopen them. The price of my career. I had spent 21 years asking the dark what I had done wrong. Why the 5-year-old got left and the baby got kept. And the answer, in her own voice, at her own dinner table, was nothing. I had done nothing. I was a line item. A cost. Paid. Filed. Closed. What broke my mother wasn't the house. Or the money. Or even the notebooks. It was watching her other daughter. The one she'd kept. The one she'd invested in. standing on the far side of that kitchen holding the phone that had just played her own voice back to her like evidence. Della. Baby? You don't understand. I understand fine. Della said. You chose. Years ago. You chose. She came around the table and stood beside me. Not touching. Just beside me. So now I'm choosing. My father tried once more. Something about lawyers. Something about his rights. And his voice ran out of road halfway through the sentence. In a kitchen where his own father's handwriting had already asked who gets the house. Dad. And nobody had even raised their voice at him. Nobody's packing anything. I said, this was his house. Now it's mine. That got settled last November. While both of you were waiting for him to die. I picked my father's keys up off the rug and held them out. He took them like they were hot. You two can go now. Then I looked at my sister. Della, do you want to stay for dinner? That was the whole speech. My mother stood in the middle of the kitchen like a woman at a bus stop in the wrong city. Then gathered her coat and the ruins of the morning. My parents walked out of my grandfather's house past the untouched coffee. And neither one said goodbye. Because what was left to abandon? Della flew back to school that weekend to finish her semester. But she came back in the middle of the following month with one bag and stayed for spring break. And when she set that bag down inside the front door, it landed on the exact square of floor where a pale green suitcase had once waited for 4 months. She was genuinely terrible in the kitchen. She held a knife like it owed her money. And I heard myself say, without deciding to, knives aren't dangerous. The wrong hands are. And had to stop and hold the counter for a second. I gave her the butcher paper package that night. Inside was one of his spiral notebooks. Recipes written out in the big, careful letters of a man typing his way through his last winter, and between the recipes, notes about me. 20 years of me. Told to a granddaughter he'd never met. So she wouldn't arrive a stranger. At one point, Della slid the notebook across the table. Her finger under a line beneath the stew recipe. Your sister seasons everything a little light. She's always leaving room for someone else to add. We didn't speak for a while after that. The pot did the talking. It wasn't instantly easy between us. One night, she said something breezy about how at least the truth was out now, and everyone could heal. And something in me went off like a smoke alarm. You lost a secret. I told her. I lost a childhood. I said things I'd carried since I was 6 years old. Some of it fair. Some of it just old. And I told her forgiveness wasn't a group activity, and I wasn't finished feeling what I felt. She didn't argue. When I finally stopped, she said quietly, You're right, and I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just don't want them to win one more time by turning us into strangers. I hung up. Not slammed. Just ended. Because I was out of words. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. One line, are you free in May? I typed back. The 12th. The reply came instantly, I know. That's why I asked. I had never told her my birthday. That spring, cleaning out the study, I found a wall calendar for the new year still in its shrink wrap. A receipt inside dated the previous December. Bought by a man who had already been told, in plain medical English, that he would not live to see it. I peeled the wrap off, blank month after blank month. And then, in the spring, one date circled twice in red pen. And inside the circle, in the shaky block letters of his last month's M26, he bought a calendar for a year he knew he wouldn't live in. So the day would exist anyway. So somebody, and he had already arranged exactly who, would know it mattered. On the morning of my 26th birthday, I woke up in my own house, watered his tomatoes, which are my tomatoes now, though they will always be his, and drank coffee on the porch. What struck me, standing on those boards, was what wasn't there. No phone lying face up on the step. No number waiting. No speech rehearsed in a bathroom mirror. For 20 years, I had treated that day as the day of waiting. He had only ever treated it as mine. My phone rang as I was locking the front door. My stomach still dropped. Old training dying hard. I turned it over. Della, happy birthday, she said, sunny and impatient. Come outside. I am outside. Not your outside. Work outside. She was standing in front of the restaurant where I'd earned my head chef position that spring. In a sundress. Having taken the early flight and a city bus like an absolute lunatic. Already charming the host into a table for two. I don't eat at tables in my own restaurant on my birthday. I cook. I cleared it with my manager in about 9 seconds. And that night, for the first time, I took my grandfather's knives out of the oak box for their actual purpose. I made his stew. The one now printed on the spring menu under his own name. And I told him so out loud, in the empty walk-in cooler. Because there was no one else to tell. I plated 3 portions. 2 went to a table by the window where my sister sat. The third went onto the blue enamel plate on the chef's counter, beside a small framed photo of a man in a cafeteria apron. Della raised her water glass and got about 4 words into a speech before abandoning it entirely. Which made it better. The first phone call I ever made to you in my life, she said, wasn't to say sorry. It was to invite you to dinner. I think you'd like that better. We ate. It needs salt, she said. I know. I told her. I leave room. Our parents taught me that family is whoever answers the phone. My grandfather taught me that family is whoever keeps making your portion. And the cycle they started didn't end when they walked back through that door with an appraiser. It ended when someone younger than me finally refused to look away. They left me at his house once. He made sure I was never truly left again. So here's my question for you. And it's a real one if you were standing on that porch with the phone finally ringing toward you instead of away from you. Would you have answered? Tell me yes or no in the comments. And if somebody in your family was the one who finally broke the cycle, tell them today. Not someday.